Before I begin telling this story, I want to clarify one thing. What you are about to read is not a work of fiction, and for a long time, I debated whether I should even write it down. It's not that the subject is painful for me, more than 20 years have passed, but it still evokes a deep, inner fear. That strange, dreadful feeling of something nightmarish, something better left unremembered. A danger that sees and hears you, while you cannot see it. My first marriage began with deceit. In the spring of 1994, I married a lively Georgian man, who later turned out to be no Genetsvali at all. Arthur turned out to be Omar. The names are unchanged, I have nothing to fear. Nationality, kissed. Religion, Muslim. I found this out only during the final months of my pregnancy. He had no family in our city. After the army, he went to work in the police and stayed in our town. Before this, Arthur, Omar wore a cross around his neck, celebrated Easter with my family, and kept 2 icons in his car. Naturally, such a drastic change left me in complete shock. Things grew worse when my husband demanded that I take off my cross, threatening not to even touch me otherwise. I refused. He would stare intently at my cross, and somehow the chain would snap, the crucifix sliding down and falling. This happened twice. It became truly terrifying after my daughter was born. From time to time, she would start twitching, then suddenly stiffen, lying straight as a board with wide-open eyes and no sign of breathing, just like a doll. I would fall into hysterics, screaming so loudly the entire building rushed in. In the hospital, they examined her several times, but every time they declared her perfectly healthy. My fear grew unbearable, and I began begging my husband to allow either baptism or some Muslim rite of dedication, anything to protect her with faith. My husband was studying at the Regional Higher School of Police then, coming home only on weekends. He brushed off my pleas, saying that Muslims had no such rights for girls. I don't know how long my indecision about going to church would have lasted, but events soon turned my life upside down. My daughter was about 4 months old. Wrapped in a warm blanket, we went for a walk with my mother. We didn't have a stroller, so we carried the baby in turns. We walked as far as the city library on the square, where we met my mother's boss, Luba. We started chatting. Then things grew hazy, but it felt as if we suddenly found ourselves under a dome, the street sounds vanished, and the people around us seemed not to notice us at all. Suddenly, a strange man appeared, slowly approaching us, saying, "Show me the baby. Let me see the baby." My mother, who was holding the child at that moment, began stepping back, clutching the bundle tighter. "We're not showing you anything, go away." But the strange man wasn't deterred. He kept coming closer, grinning crookedly. "If you won't show me, I'll look for myself." My mother called for help, but it felt like no one could hear us, as if passers-by didn't even see us. At that moment, my mother's boss suddenly went into hysterics. Luba was shaking all over, consumed by a mad, unstoppable laughter. I stood frozen, paralyzed, watching him approach. Rage and impatience spread across his face. Then I saw his terrifying grin and the abyss of his eyes, black voids, without pupils or whites. Just darkness. At the last moment, a thought flashed through my mind: if he looks at her, it's the end. And some unseen force hurled me between my mother with the baby and him. Only a single step separated us. A brief pause hung in the air. I avoided his eyes, fixing my gaze on the bridge of his nose. Smirking cruelly, he hissed, "Then today, it's you. But I will return." Suddenly, the sounds of the street came back, and people began turning their heads, because Luba was still hysterically laughing through her tears. We had to slap her face to bring her out of it. Once she regained herself, her first question was, "Where is that man?" Or rather, she called him Mephistopheles. But where was he? We never knew. He simply vanished, walking one moment, gone the next. At home, I was overcome by a dreadful weakness. I couldn't even keep my eyes open, let alone stand. I lay down on the couch. I felt weightless, as though suspended between ceiling and floor, my thoughts muddled. And then the film began. I saw my entire life, frame by frame, like an old film strip. At first the frames moved slowly, like slides being changed, then faster and faster. I watched my life in reverse, moving toward zero, toward my birth. With each frame, I felt my strength slipping away. Finally, I saw myself as an infant, barely a year old. At that moment, I realized with terrifying clarity, once the film reached zero, I would die. I wanted to live more than ever. Instinctively, I clutched the film in my mind and began pulling it back, frame by frame, with immense effort. And I made it back. My mother rushed to see our acquaintance, Taisia, who used to practice as, how to put it, a sorcerer, an energy healer. Until one terrible event forced her to quit and never speak of magic again. Taisia ordered us to baptize the child immediately, saying she bore a special mark on her body. She even described its place and form. About me she said, "You survived by a miracle. If it had been an ordinary person without certain abilities, you'd have been dead by sunset." Ignoring my husband, while he was away, I went with my mother, daughter, and a friend to church. It was March, bitterly cold. On the way, our bus broke down in the middle of the step, the tire burst. We stood there with the infant in the icy wind, crying helplessly. Suddenly, a familiar man drove up and gave us a ride. But on the way, he grew dizzy, and we had to stop several times. Then we lost our way, circling endlessly, unable to find the only church in our small town with barely 15 bus stops. During baptism, my daughter screamed so violently that she turned blue, arching her body like a bow. The priest kept giving us wary looks, but he finished the rite. The moment it ended, she fell asleep, and didn't wake up until evening. The next morning, the phone rang. It was my husband, his voice furious. "What have you done? Tell me. What did you do?" "I did nothing." "Why are you yelling? Why did you go to church? You baptized her, didn't you?" "Yes, I did." "But how do you know?" He hung up. I never tried to unravel the mysteries of Arthur Omar. Instead, I filed for divorce and, in court, refused alimony, so that no papers would follow me around. I moved 3,000 kilometers away and changed my name. I saw him again 15 years later, over Skype. But that is another story.